Growing up, my parents always praised my brother while criticizing my choices. Despite this, I worked hard, saved every penny, and finally achieved my dream, buying my first home at 29. I wanted it to be my sanctuary, my achievement. When I finally told my parents, their response crushed me. "Great, now your brother can have a home office and his kids will have more space." That moment changed everything between us. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you are watching from. Hit that like and subscribe button if you have ever had family try to hijack your accomplishments. I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood in Portland, Oregon, where every house looked nearly identical except for the color of the shutters and the height of the hedges. My childhood home was pale blue with white trim, but despite its cheerful exterior, the atmosphere inside was often tense and uncomfortable for me. From my earliest memories, it was clear my parents favored my older brother James. He was the golden child, tall, athletic, and academically gifted. By the time I was 10, James was already being groomed for success, with my father Robert spending weekends teaching him about stocks and investments. Meanwhile, I developed an interest in digital marketing and web design, teaching myself coding languages and building small websites for fun. "Christopher, stop playing on those computers and do something productive," my father would scold whenever he found me working on a new project. It did not matter that I was actually teaching myself skills that would later become my career. To him, anything involving a computer screen was just a waste of time. When James got accepted to an Ivy League college on a partial scholarship, my parents threw an extravagant party inviting everyone they knew. His graduation photo was framed and placed prominently in our living room. When I landed my first paid web design gig at 16, my mother Diana merely nodded and said, "That is nice, dear. Just do not let it interfere with your schoolwork." My father was a stern businessman who valued traditional success degrees from prestigious universities, corporate jobs with impressive titles, and a respectable income that could be bragged about at neighborhood barbecues. My mother claimed to be neutral, but she enabled the favoritism, always making excuses for my father and brother. "Your father just wants what is best for you," she would say, after particularly painful comparisons to James. "And your brother has a lot of pressure on him to succeed." What about the pressure on me? The pressure of never being good enough, never meeting the invisible standard that seemed to rise higher with every small success I achieved. By the time I graduated high school, I had learned to keep my accomplishments to myself. They would only be diminished, compared unfavorably to something James had done, or dismissed entirely. At 19, I moved out of my parents' house into a tiny studio apartment that smelled perpetually of the Indian restaurant below. The rent consumed nearly half my income from my entry-level digital marketing job, but the freedom was worth every penny. During the day, I worked full-time, and 3 nights a week, I attended community college classes, slowly working toward a degree in marketing and communications. My path was not the direct 4-year university experience my parents had envisioned for their sons. While James completed law school and joined a prestigious corporate firm, I built my career from the ground up, learning through experience and determination rather than formal education. For 5 years, I lived in that cramped apartment, gradually climbing the career ladder. I moved from company to company, gaining experience and increasing my salary with each job change. By 26, I had become a digital marketing manager at a respectable agency handling accounts for several major local businesses. Throughout this time, I developed a close friendship with my coworker Michael. Unlike my family, Michael recognized my hard work and talent. He became my main support system, the person who celebrated my victories and helped me through setbacks. "You know, Chris, not everyone has parents who get it," he told me once over beers after a particularly difficult phone call with my father. "Some of us have to build our own cheering section, and that is exactly what I did. I created boundaries with my family, limited my visits to major holidays, deflected personal questions, and shared as little as possible about my career and finances. It was easier that way, less painful, than seeking approval I would never receive. By 28, I had saved enough for a substantial down payment on a house. The thought of owning my own home, a space that was truly mine, that could not be compared to anything my brother had, became my driving goal. I lived frugally, turned down vacations with friends, picked up freelance projects on weekends, and put every extra dollar into my savings account. When I finally had enough saved, I contacted a realtor named Alicia, who had been recommended by a colleague. From our first meeting, she understood what I was looking for, not just a house, but a sanctuary. "A home is more than walls and a roof," she said, as we sat in her office discussing my budget and requirements. "It is a reflection of who you are and what matters to you." Over the next 8 months, Alicia and I viewed 27 houses. "Then he should buy his own house," I replied, my hands beginning to shake under the table. My mother's eyes filled with tears, a response I had seen many times when she did not get her way. "I cannot believe you would be so selfish. This is tearing our family apart." As if on cue, the phone rang. My mother answered and immediately brightened. "James, we were just talking about you. Yes, Christopher is here. He has some wonderful news that might solve your housing problems." The house was not perfect, the kitchen needed updating, and the backyard was overgrown. But the moment I walked through the front door, something clicked. The living room had built-in bookshelves and a window seat. The master bedroom had windows on 2 sides, flooding the space with natural light. The smaller bedrooms would make perfect home offices. The asking price was at the top of my budget, but Alicia helped me negotiate a fair deal. To afford the down payment, I liquidated most of my non-retirement investments and took on additional freelance work. Every sacrifice felt worthwhile. This house represented everything I had worked for. Throughout the entire house hunting process and closing, I told no one in my family what I was doing. My previous experiences had taught me that any accomplishment of mine would be dismissed, diminished, or somehow twisted to reflect well on James instead of me. I consulted my therapist, Dr. Patterson, about setting these boundaries. "Sometimes we need to protect our joy from those who cannot celebrate with us," she told me during one session. "You can share your news when and if you feel ready." The closing day was surreal. Sitting at a table with a stack of papers to sign, watching the sellers hand over the keys, my keys. Walking through the empty house afterward, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood floors. Standing in the kitchen, imagining meals I would cook. For the first time, I had a space that was entirely mine, that reflected my success, not in comparison to anyone else. I moved in with help from friends, not family. Michael and several colleagues spent a Saturday carrying furniture and boxes, setting up my bedroom and living room, and christening the house with pizza and beer on the floor, since I had not yet bought a dining table. That first night alone in my new house was one of the most peaceful of my life. I sat on my couch, looking around at the space I had created through years of hard work and sacrifice. I promised myself I would eventually tell my parents once I was fully settled. Maybe, just maybe, this accomplishment would finally earn their approval. I had been living in my new home for nearly 3 weeks when the carefully constructed separation between my personal life and my family collapsed. It happened on a Saturday at the local hardware store where I was buying supplies to repaint the spare bedroom. My cart was filled with paint rollers, drop cloths, and primer when a familiar voice called my name. I turned to find my Aunt Karen, my mother's sister, examining my purchases with curious eyes. "Christopher, what are you doing with all this paint? Helping a friend with renovations?" she asked, peering into my cart. For a split second, I considered lying, but something in me rebelled against hiding my accomplishment. "Actually, I just bought a house. I am fixing it up room by room." Her eyes widened, and I immediately recognized my mistake. Aunt Karen was the family's most efficient information conduit. Any news shared with her would reach every relative within 24 hours. A house. Your own house. Oh my goodness, that is wonderful. Where is it? How many bedrooms? Does your mother know? I answered vaguely, hoping to minimize the damage, but by the time we parted ways, I knew it was only a matter of time before my phone would ring. It took precisely 4 hours. Christopher, my mother's voice was a mixture of hurt and curiosity. Karen tells me you bought a house. When were you going to share this news with us? The guilt she managed to inject into those few words was impressive, as though my private purchase was actually a personal betrayal against her. I explained that I had been planning to tell them once I was settled, which was partially true. Well, we want to hear all about it. Your father and I insist you come to dinner this Friday. James and his family might be able to join us too. The invitation felt more like a summons, and despite my misgivings, I agreed. Over the next few days, anxiety built in my chest like a physical presence. I had an emergency session with Dr. Patterson to prepare mentally. Remember, this is your achievement, she reminded me. Regardless of their reaction, buying your home was a significant accomplishment that no one can take from you. Friday evening arrived too quickly. I pulled into my parents' driveway, clutching a folder containing a few photos of my house. Despite everything, a small part of me still hoped for their approval, their recognition that I had done something worthwhile. The initial conversation was surprisingly pleasant. My mother asked about the neighborhood, and my father inquired about the mortgage rate I had secured. For a brief, hopeful moment, I thought perhaps I had misjudged how they would react. It happened on a Saturday at the local hardware store, where I was buying supplies to repaint the spare bedroom. My cart was filled with paint rollers, drop cloths, and primer when a familiar voice called my name. I turned to find my Aunt Karen, my mother's sister, examining my purchases with curious eyes. "Christopher, what are you doing with all this paint? Helping a friend with renovations?" she asked, peering into my cart. "How many square feet total?" "About 2,000 with the finished basement." I replied, a hint of pride creeping into my voice. That is when it happened. The moment that would forever change my relationship with my parents. "This would be perfect for James," my mother said, not to me, but to my father. "He was just saying how cramped their condo is now that Sophia is expecting their second child." My father nodded thoughtfully. "The third bedroom would make an excellent home office for him." "Where is it? How many bedrooms? Does your mother know?" I answered vaguely, hoping to minimize the damage, but by the time we parted ways, I knew it was only a matter of time before my phone would ring. It took precisely 4 hours. Christopher, my mother's voice was a mixture of hurt and curiosity. I shared the photos, pointing out features of the house I particularly loved. 3 bedrooms, my mother asked, counting rooms in one of the photos. "That is a lot of space for just one person." "One is the master bedroom, and I use one as a home office," I explained. "The third will be a guest room once I get it set up properly." My father studied the photos with calculating eyes, the way he might examine a business proposal. Good-sized lot. Basement, too. My house that I had saved years for. My house that represented my independence and success. Where would I live? I finally managed to ask, my voice barely audible. My mother patted my hand. "You could stay in the guest room here until you find a new apartment. Or maybe James would let you use the spare room sometimes if you needed to." I thought they must be joking. This had to be some kind of bizarre test or prank. But their expressions were entirely serious, expectant, even as though waiting for me to recognize the obvious logic of their plan. "No," I said simply. They both looked startled, as though the possibility of refusal had never occurred to them. "No," I repeated more firmly. "It is my house. I bought it. I live there." Christopher, my father's voice, took on the stern tone I remembered from childhood lectures. "Do not be selfish. Your brother has a family to consider." "What are you talking about? Your brother needs more space," my father explained slowly, as though speaking to a child. "This house would be perfect for his growing family." My mother was already mentally measuring for furniture. We could help him move the nursery furniture into the smaller bedroom. The baby is due in August, so they would need to get settled before then. I sat there stunned as they continued planning how my brother's family could use my house. She put the call on speaker, placing the phone in the center of the dining table, like an altar around which we were all expected to worship. "Hey, little brother," James's voice filled the room. "Mom says, you bought a house. That is great timing. We have been going crazy, looking for a bigger place. The market is insane right now." Before I could respond, my father jumped in. "It sounds perfect for your needs. 3 bedrooms, nice yard, good neighborhood." "That sounds amazing," James replied. "When can we come see it?" The casual entitlement in his voice ignited something in me. Years of being second best, of having my achievements dismissed, of being expected to step aside for my brother, it all crystallized in that moment. "Never," I said clearly. "You are never seeing my house because it is not for you. I bought it for myself. I live there. It is mine." A painful silence filled the room. "Chris, be reasonable." James finally said, his tone patronizing. "You are single. You do not need all that space. We have a child and another on the way." "That sounds like a personal problem," I replied, surprising myself with the coldness in my voice. "Maybe you should have secured housing before expanding your family." My mother gasped. My father's face darkened with anger. "You have always been jealous of your brother's success," he said, his voice low and dangerous. "This petty behavior is exactly why we worried about you being responsible enough for homeownership in the first place." Something broke inside me. The careful walls I had built to protect myself from their judgment came crashing down. "Jealous. I have worked for everything I have while you handed James. Every opportunity I put myself through college, working full-time. I built my career from nothing. I saved for years to buy this house, and I did it all without a single word of encouragement from either of you." My voice had risen to a shout. My mother was openly crying now, while my father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. "How dare you speak to us this way, after everything we have done for you?" he thundered. "What exactly have you done for me?" I demanded. "Name one time you supported my choices or celebrated my success without comparing me to James." Some were too small. Others needed more renovation than I could afford, and many just did not feel right. House hunting became a part-time job every weekend, spent driving from property to property, evaluating neighborhoods, considering commute times, and trying to envision a future in each space. After months of searching, we found it a 3-bedroom craftsman in a quiet neighborhood with mature trees and sidewalks. They actually expect me to give up my house so my brother's family can live there. The tears came then, years of pent-up hurt pouring out in the darkness of my parked car, with only my best friend to witness the breakdown. Over the next few days, my phone became a weapon of psychological warfare. Text messages and calls poured in from my parents, James, his wife, and various extended family members, all expressing shock and disappointment at my selfishness. Neither of them could answer. I stood up, my legs unsteady. "I am leaving. Do not contact me about this again. My house is not available." I walked out, leaving behind my mother's sobs and my father's angry protests. In my car, my hands were shaking so badly I could not insert the key into the ignition. I sat there for nearly 20 minutes trying to calm myself enough to drive. Finally, I called Michael. "They want to give my house to James," I said when he answered, my voice breaking. The most stunning betrayal came when my parents showed up unannounced at my workplace, asking the receptionist to call me down to the lobby. I found them waiting there, my mother clutching a folder of house listings. "We found some nice 1-bedroom apartments that would suit your needs," she explained, as though our previous conversation had never happened. My boss, Amanda, noticed my distress when I returned to my desk. "Everything okay?" "Your parents seemed intense." I gave her an abbreviated version of the situation, and her jaw literally dropped. "That is insane," she said flatly. "They expected you to give your brother your house. Who does that?" The stress was taking a physical toll. I could not sleep. My appetite disappeared, and anxiety attacks ambushed me at random moments throughout the day. Even in my new home, I felt unsettled, jumping at every car that slowed near my driveway, half expecting to find my family on my doorstep. James called 4 times, each message more condescending than the last. "I know you are upset, but let us talk this through like adults," he said in one voicemail. "There are practical considerations you may not have thought of." My mother texted, hourly alternating between guilt trips. "This is breaking your father's heart," and thinly veiled threats. "Families should support each other if they want support in return." "We thought it would be easier if James could see the space," my mother replied breezily. "No point arguing about it without him even seeing if it would work for them." "I told you," I began. But James interrupted. "Chris, be reasonable. We are here now. Let us at least look around." Something in his entitled tone broke my resistance. "Fine. Let them see what they were trying to take from me. Maybe then they would understand." That was a mistake. Within minutes, my house had been invaded. James's children ran from room to room, opening closets and drawers. "Daddy, can this be my room?" Emma called from my home office, where I had carefully arranged my desk and bookshelves. My mother walked through each space with a critical eye. "The kitchen cabinets would need to be replaced," she commented. "And these light fixtures are not your style at all, James. They actually expect me to give up my house so my brother's family can live there." The tears came then, years of pent-up hurt pouring out in the darkness of my parked car, with only my best friend to witness the breakdown. Over the next few days, my phone became a weapon of psychological warfare. Text messages and calls poured in from my parents, James, his wife, and various extended family members, all expressing shock and disappointment at my selfishness. Something inside me broke, or perhaps it was something finally falling into place, a clarity I had never experienced before. I walked back to the living room where my family had gathered. My mother was now measuring windows for curtains, while my father and James discussed potential renovation plans as if the decision had already been made. "Get out," I said quietly. No one even looked up. "Get out." I roared a sound I hardly recognized as my own voice. "Get out of my house, now." The room fell silent, all eyes turning to me in shock. "Christopher," my mother started, "you are being dramatic as always. We are just, no." My voice was calm now, but it carried an authority I had never felt before. "This is my house. I did not invite you here. You are trespassing. Leave now, or I will call the police." "You would not dare," my father challenged. I pulled out my phone and dialed 9, my finger hovering over the final one. "Try me." For perhaps the first time in my life, they actually looked at me, really saw me standing firm in my own home, unwilling to be bulldozed by their expectations and demands. "Let us go," James finally said, ushering his confused children toward the door. "Chris is obviously not in a reasonable state right now." They filed out, my mother pausing at the door. "When you calm down and think this through properly," I closed the door in her face and leaned against it, my heart pounding in my chest. Then I called a locksmith who arrived within the hour to change every lock on my house. That evening, I contacted a lawyer to understand my options if their harassment continued. The feeling of taking decisive action was empowering. For the first time, I was establishing firm boundaries without apology or explanation. My house was mine, my life was mine, and I would no longer accept being treated as an accessory to my brother's story. The nuclear phase of this family war began the next day. My father called to inform me that if I continued this childish tantrum, I would be removed from their will. My mother enlisted family friends to call me each conversation, beginning with, "I am sure you did not mean to upset your parents so badly, but—" James took a different approach, sending a vaguely threatening email about verbal agreements regarding family support and potential legal considerations, as though he could sue me for a house I had purchased entirely with my own money that he had never even seen until yesterday. The most painful escalation came when my mother began calling my childhood friends, sharing embarrassing stories about my emotional problems as a teenager and suggesting I might need psychiatric help. One friend called to warn me about this smear campaign, horrified by my mother's behavior. "I always thought your mom was so sweet," she said. "I cannot believe she told me about your therapy sessions in high school. That is so private." It was the ultimate betrayal, using my personal struggles against me, weaponizing moments of vulnerability I had shared with them in confidence. In her desperate attempt to control me, my mother had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. After 2 weeks of constant harassment, I made a difficult decision. I blocked my parents' and brother's numbers on my phone. Not forever, but for long enough to reclaim my mental health and the joy of my new home. My therapy sessions with Dr. Patterson intensified as we worked through the family trauma that had been exposed. "What you are experiencing is a grief process," she explained. "You are mourning the family relationship you wished you had while establishing boundaries with the family you actually have." I created new house rules: visitors by invitation only, no unexpected drop-ins, no discussions of who would live in my house other than me. They were simple boundaries that any reasonable person would respect, but they represented a seismic shift in my family dynamic. 3 weeks after the confrontation, I hosted my first proper housewarming party. Michael, Amanda, and other friends from work came along with neighbors I had met and several clients who had become friends. We grilled in the backyard, played music too loud, and christened every room with laughter and conversation. Michael brought me a "Home Sweet Home" sign as a housewarming gift. "For when you are ready," he said. I hung it by the front door that very night, a declaration that this space was mine. My sanctuary, my achievement. After a month of silence, I felt strong enough to reestablish limited contact with my family. I crafted a clear, firm email outlining my non-negotiable boundaries regarding my property and my life. "I value family," I wrote, "but not at the expense of my own well-being and independence. My home is not available for James or anyone else. This topic is closed for discussion. If you wish to have a relationship with me, you must respect this boundary absolutely." The responses were predictable. My father did not respond at all. My mother sent a tearful voicemail about how much I had hurt them. James sent a terse message suggesting we move past this unfortunate misunderstanding. Surprisingly, my Aunt Karen, the very one who had inadvertently started this mess, reached out with a genuine apology. "I never imagined it would escalate like this," she said during a coffee meetup. "For what it is worth, I think you did the right thing. Standing up for yourself was long overdue." Her support meant more than I expected. I joined a support group for adults from controlling families, where I met others with similar experiences. Their stories helped me realize that my situation, while painful, was not unique and that healing was possible. My parents initially refused to accept the new boundaries, testing them repeatedly with guilt-laden messages and accidental drive-bys of my house. Each time I restated my position calmly but firmly. For the first time in my life, I declined holiday invitations without offering excuses or apologies. 6 months after buying my house, I had transformed it into a true sanctuary. The spare bedroom became a music room, where I returned to the guitar I had abandoned in college. The backyard now boasted raised garden beds, where I grew tomatoes and herbs. Each room reflected my tastes, my interests, my life, not as an extension of my family, but as an independent person. I formed new friendships through neighborhood connections: the couple down the street who shared my interest in craft beer, the elderly man next door who taught me about native plants for my garden. My world expanded beyond the narrow confines of family expectation. My newfound confidence extended to my career as well. I successfully pitched a major new client at work, earning a promotion to senior manager. The boundaries I had established in my personal life translated into clearer professional boundaries too. I no longer worked excessive hours to prove my worth. Some family relationships began to heal on my terms. My cousin David visited for a weekend and respected every boundary without question. A few aunts and uncles maintained relationships with me separate from the family drama. Even my brother James eventually acknowledged, in his own roundabout way, that his behavior had been inappropriate. I should have congratulated you properly on buying a place, he said, during a carefully neutral phone call months later. It is a big accomplishment. It was the closest thing to an apology I would likely ever receive from him. My relationship with my parents remained strained, but stabilized into a new normal. We spoke occasionally, with clear boundaries, about acceptable topics. I visited their home for specific time-limited events. They were allowed in my home only by invitation for defined periods. It was not warm or comfortable, but it was manageable. The unexpected silver lining in all this turmoil was meeting Eliza at a neighborhood block party. She lived 3 streets over, worked as a graphic designer, and understood family complications all too well. Our relationship developed naturally and easily built on mutual respect for each other's boundaries and independence. The most profound lesson from this experience was understanding that true family respects boundaries. Blood relation does not grant unlimited access to your life, your space, or your achievements. My self-worth was not determined by my family's validation. It came from within, from the life I had built on my own terms. I discovered strength I never knew I had through enforcing those personal boundaries. Each time I said no and stood firm, I reclaimed a piece of myself that I had surrendered to family expectations over the years. I learned that my accomplishments did not need external approval to matter. The pride I felt in my home came from knowing what it represented: years of hard work, careful saving, and personal sacrifice. No one could diminish that achievement no matter how they tried. The freedom in creating my chosen family of supportive friends was perhaps the greatest gift of this painful journey. These were people who celebrated my successes without comparison, who respected my boundaries without question, who valued me for exactly who I was. As I continue building my life on my own terms, I sometimes think about what I would tell my younger self, that boy who tried so hard to earn approval that would never come. I would tell him that one day he would find the courage to break free from those expectations, that he would build a beautiful life filled with genuine connections, that the approval he sought from others would eventually come from within. Have you ever had to stand up to family pressure like this? Let me know in the comments what boundaries you have had to set with your own family. If this story resonated with you, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more stories about finding strength in difficult situations. Share this video with someone who might need encouragement to set their own boundaries. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember, your life belongs to you, no one else.